I'm sure our chairman will have time to get back to the committee before any votes are called. So I have a motion that I would like to move, and it is that given that Canadians have been lining up at food banks in record numbers and facing the worst cost of living crisis in a generation, the President of the King's Privy Council for Canada, Minister for Emergency Preparedness, and Minister responsible for the Pacific Economic Development Agency of Canada accepted 2 taxpayer-funded VIP suite tickets to attend a Taylor Swift concert in Vancouver, and the Prime Minister's office has not clarified how the Prime Minister was able to obtain tickets to a Taylor Swift concert in Toronto, including whether he was offered exclusive access or pricing. The committee order PAVCO to provide to the clerk of the committee within 2 weeks all records concerning the offer of providing of tickets for any of the Taylor Swift concerts at BC Place to any federal ministers, officials, or ministerial exempt staff, including copies of any related communications, and order the Prime Minister and the Prime Minister's office to provide the clerk of the committee within 1 week any records concerning payment for Taylor Swift concert tickets which the Prime Minister purchased.
The motion has been moved in committee business. So Mr. Barrett has moved a motion. We're going to distribute that motion to committee members, but go ahead, and then I've got Ms. Khalid on the motion. Go ahead, Mr. Barrett.
Chair, just very briefly, given the cost of living crisis that Canadians are facing, we can't look past that amid the excitement of a pop star coming to Canada. We can't have members of the executive, their exempt staff, receiving preferential treatment or preferential pricing to attend those events, when, of course, the focus of government should be on providing for Canadians. It's that simple. Food bank use is at record high. 2 million Canadians using food banks in a single month. So this motion isn't calling for the appearance of any witnesses. It's not calling for any meetings. What this is calling for is the production of documents. And on the committee's return at the end of January, the committee can consider the information received from PAVCO and the information received from the Prime Minister's office and the Prime Minister concerning these tickets. It should be pretty straight up and down when we're talking about individuals who are subject to the Conflict of Interest Act, like the Minister, like those exempt staff, and like the Prime Minister. But it of course, would be completely inappropriate if we discovered that any of these individuals were using their positions or their power to have preferential treatment when the discharge of their authority should be, at this point, exclusively focused on helping Canadians who are struggling.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Barrett. There's paper copies that are being circulated in both languages. Ms. Khalid, suivi par Monsieur Vermure sur la motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate that. Really nice to have this meeting here today, although I had hoped that we would spend more time on issues that quite frankly have a greater impact on Canadians. I know that we had started the study on Uber and rideshare companies and their impact on the privacy of Canadians, on the use of surcharges, how those charges go to the hands of gig workers and gig economy, and yet here we are once again neglecting the real work that we should be doing and putting forward a whole bunch of very, very partisan mumbo-jumbo to debate here in this committee, knowing full well what the outcome is going to be. I am quite disappointed, Chair, that we did not go down the path of actual work in ethics. Having said that, I think that I may be able to support this motion as I go through it, but I would make some substantial amendments to this motion as it is. If it is indeed just a production of documents, I don't see why we would delay it when, Minister Sajjan has clearly said exactly what happened. But I do find that there are some mistakes, at least in this very ridiculous preamble of this motion. But as I review it, I'm sure that my colleagues would want to speak up, and perhaps in a little while I can present an amendment based on what I think we would take away the partisanship of this motion and actually accept documents that Sorry, what was that, Mr. Caputo?
Mr. Caputo, Ms. Khalid has the floor. Go ahead, Ms. Khalid.
I just wanted to clarify if there was anything that I said that was maybe hurtful or something. Okay, yeah. Thank you. I'll look forward to returning the favor. But as I said, I'll pause for a moment and cede the floor to some of my colleagues as I look to see what we can work together to build a more consensus-filled motion on this issue. Thanks, Chair.
OK. Prochaine intervention est pour...
Next comments, Mr. Villemur on the motion, followed by Ms. Shanahan, Mr. Fisher, and Mr. Housefather. Mr. Villemur. Thank you, Chair. I would like to ask my esteemed colleague so that we could have a more exhaustive idea if we could invite Taylor Swift to testify. Is that an amendment that you're tabling? A friendly amendment? Thank you, Mr. Villemur. Perhaps my daughter would want to come to listen into to that meeting.
Ms. Shanahan. Go ahead, Ms. Shanahan.
Thank you, Chair. And en fait, un peu dans la même ligne.
Without making any jokes, but in a similar idea here, Taylor Swift is quite the phenomenon, and she takes up a lot of the imagination of parliamentarians here and for Canadians too. I don't want to offend Miss Swift. I tried to listen to her music and I don't get it. But, I mean, I guess that's normal. I think myself and a few others around the table are from the rock and roll era, you know? Janis Joplin and, you know, right? The 90s, you know? Robert Charlebois, Harmonium. You know, I know those bands that were not only musical groups, but they also were poets, and this music really spoke to my generation. I think that brought a lot of charisma. And it's important for a star to really be able to captivate a whole generation. And Miss Swift was able to do that. I had the same feelings regarding Madonna. I didn't really get it. But there were a few songs that were good to dance to. And we're the same age, so imagine. So trends aren't going to meet everyone's taste. And again, perhaps we'd have to speak to Miss Swift's management team and to see how tickets were distributed. And from what I've read, she's a businesswoman. She has been part of ticket distribution more than once. And she's quite interested in that aspect of her business. So that could be interesting. But as my colleague, Ms. Khalid, stated, if it's a matter of documents, I'm sure there would be a public account, and it might take some time. with accounting for these public funds. I'm not sure how accessible these documents are, but perhaps I'm wrong. I'm not aware of all of the details and the administrative details. There's also the matter that the tickets were gifted in exchange for a donation to a food bank. In the end, the tickets were not accepted, but the donation was done anyway. So, honestly, I think there was some goodwill there from both sides. If I've understood correctly, Taylor Swift's message is about joy and being kind to one another. But we're not nice, so we're not kind to former boyfriends. That's a big no, and I understand her there.
The Liberals are going to filibuster. They might as well at least keep it on point.
Yeah.
This has nothing to do. I mean, pretty soon we're going to start hearing about Travis Kelce. The reality is that...
Who's that?
Who's that? Well, there you go.
Very famous football player.
Oh, okay, well,
I have your
really not my...
Mr. Caputo, I understand your point. Ms. Shanahan has the floor. She can speak for as long as she wants. I'm sure she's going to bring it back to where we need it to be. But I generally, as you know, give a lot of latitude to what members say, and so, or can say. And I'm going to go back to Ms. Shanahan because she has the floor. And Ms. Shanahan.
Oui, bien, merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président, parce que...
Thank you very much, Chair. Because I am talking about the motion and the topic of the motion, but Mr. Caputo, you did well in putting your earpiece on because you'll better understand my arguments and where I am in my thought process regarding this motion. The motion mentions Taylor Swift, so it is relevant. We're talking about a Taylor Swift concert and how it's linked to the matter of affordability and how Canadians are going to food banks. And there was also the matter of a donation to a food bank. So I think that all of this is relevant. Taylor Swift was the inspiration for a donation to a food bank. And I imagine that most of her fans would be inspired to do something similar. Taylor Swift is very popular with everyone. Kind of like Justin Bieber. That's another star that had fans in a certain generation, and he had good songs to dance to. Mr. Harper's children were fans of his and went to concerts. Perhaps we should look into the phenomenon of stars and why it's so important for people to attend these concerts. It's a bit of a philosophical matter, isn't it, Mr. Chair? If not everyone can go to a concert, should no one be able to go to a concert? And I'm looking at Mr. Villemur because he understands this kind of ethical question, this philosophical question. There are people who are not well off, who would have liked to go see Taylor Swift, who did not have the opportunity. Does that mean that no one should be allowed to go see Taylor Swift? Some people paid a lot of money for these tickets. Some won these tickets in a contest, but not everyone was able to win tickets to see Taylor Swift. So it's a bit of a tough question to look at. You know that dog?
Dog in the manger problem. You know, lui est pas capable de manger le.
That dog can't eat the hay, but he's not going to let anybody else do it either. But perhaps there are parliamentarians who were disappointed to not go see Taylor Swift. Perhaps we should survey MPs and see what her popularity is among MPs and sort it by age and political party. When I see a motion like this one, I always wonder what the goal is. Is it to punish some people because we're talking about different musical tastes? But I'll stop there, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Ms. Shanahan. Mr. Fisher.
Et Monsieur Villemur, j'ai vu ta main.
Yes. Me first?
Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'm just looking at this motion and I'm thinking about, you know, Brenda touched on November 2012 when PM Harper awarded Justin Bieber the Diamond Jubilee Medal and then attended the concert with his family that night. Obviously, that's something we'd want to add, assuming we can go back that far. Obviously, the NHL game that Stephen Harper attended in the Toronto Dominion Garden, TD Garden in Boston, with one of his ministers, I think there's value in going back and seeing the documents and those things so we can see whether these are patterns for ministers and for former prime ministers. So I would say that we definitely need to have a long conversation about this motion if we want to get down to the point that Mr. Barrett's actually looking for. Ikra talked about, Madame Khalid talked about the opening couple of paragraphs there. They don't need to be there. I mean, we could have a chat, for instance, about getting rid of the whole 1, 2, and 3 and work on the conversation on A and B. I will say, Mr. Speaker, or Mr. Chair, we didn't really expect a meeting today. We had a conversation about this, and it looked like there wasn't going to be one. So I would say that I don't know whether it's just one member needs to reach out to the chair and book a meeting. I assume Mr. Barrett must have just reached out to you. I'm not sure how it all happened, but and we're meeting at a different time of the day. Obviously, the OPPO-led committees have the ability and would take the ability, of course, to meet as many times as they possibly can. We don't have a problem with that. But it does seem that this propped up. Mr. Barrett said, "I've got a motion. We've got to meet before Christmas, and we've got a motion."
Yeah, no,
on the floor.
Mr. Fisher, I can confirm that didn't happen, and thank God we have opposition-led meetings. Okay, thank God.
So,
Go ahead.
I guess then what I would say is, are we going to, and can we take a little bit of time to go back through history and look to see who went to concerts and who went to Stanley Cup games, so we can find out exactly what the tradition is, what the pattern is, and who has paid for tickets. For instance, was this quid pro quo? Justin Bieber gets a Diamond Jubilee medal, and then all of a sudden Mr. Harper's family gets tickets to the concert? I mean, inquiring minds might want to know that. So I would say that moving forward, we would probably consider several amendments to this motion. I'll let the next person in line speak on this, but certainly we'll ruminate, and I'll go through the Google machine and find some other examples that we might want to include.
Okay, thank you for that, Mr. Fisher. And yeah, just to reconfirm that I did call this meeting, as is my prerogative as chair. And you notice that a time slot did open up from 11 to 1, which is good because I was trying to avoid that 3:30 to 5:30 meeting so that the Liberals could enjoy their holiday Christmas party this evening. So you can thank my benevolence for that. Go ahead, Mr. Housefather.
Will the Deputy Prime Minister be there?
Monsieur Housefather Premier et Monsieur Cooper, puis toi. Pardon? Non. Ça, c'est... Attends une seconde, je vais mentionner à la... OK. Vilmer Cooper and then Shannon? OK. No, because moi, j'ai vu Monsieur Housefather...
I had seen Mr. Housefather. We're going to go to Mr. Housefather, and then Mr. Villemur, and then Mr. Cooper. I'm working with the clerk to follow the list.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and I would certainly second you being allowed to have the moniker John the Benevolent. You know, there was Alfred the Great. There was Alfred the Great and Ethelred the Unready. You know, I think John the Benevolent sounds very good. I also wanted to just come back to what I consider to be a sad commentary about Madonna. I personally think Madonna is an incredible singer and one of my favorites when I was a little kid, and I really, you know, would appreciate a higher level of respect for Madonna. But I love Material Girl.
I know everybody is excited to get to the Christmas carols that I prepared in both official languages that we're going to sing at the end of the meeting. But let's keep the meeting on track, please. Okay? Yeah. Thank you.
I'm looking forward to that, Mr. Chair. So basically, I'm just looking at the motion, and as we all know, the substance of the motion is what the committee actually orders as production. The preamble to this motion, first of all, goes into talking about food banks, which is completely irrelevant to the substance of the motion. The second little two doesn't tell the full story of what the minister has already disclosed. For example, it doesn't mention his charitable donation of $1,500. And the third one, the Prime Minister's office has not clarified. Well, there's no obligation on them to actually clarify this. So to me, in order to avoid a lengthy debate about a preamble that really doesn't deal with the substance of the motion and is unnecessary for the adoption of the substance of the motion, I would propose, Mr. Chair, that an amendment to delete the preamble, meaning little 1, little 2, and little 3 of the motion. I think that will help us get to a better discussion of the actual substance of the motion, so we don't have to worry about the superfluous language that is somewhat slanted in one direction. So that would be my proposal, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Housefather. And so the amendment is to delete the preamble. Members of the committee are well aware of my thoughts on preambles. Let's get to the substance of what we want here as a committee. If we choose to vote for whatever the ask is, I'm not a big fan of preambles because I do think it opens up a tremendous amount of problems in the debate. So I agree with Mr. Housefather on that. So we have an amendment on the floor. Do we have any discussion on the amendment? Ms. Shanahan, go ahead.
Well, once again, I think we can always rely on Mr. Housefather to get to sort of the heart of the matter. And I fully agree that, we don't need the superfluous language in the preamble. I do note that Taylor Swift is still in the main body of the resolution. So, there is some question about tickets for other programs, other shows, other sports events, and so on. So, I may have something to say about that when we're discussing the main motion. On the amendment itself, I'm certainly in agreement.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Shanahan. I don't see any other discussion. We're on the amendment. Yep. Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr.
Speaker, Mr. Chair, and I would thank Brenda for moving that.
No, the House Father.
So the amendment was moved by Mr. Housefather to delete the preamble. That's what we're on right now.
Okay.
I would love to deal with that quickly if we can.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
So on the amendment, I don't see any other discussion. Do we have agreement on the amendment? No. Okay. So we're going to call a vote. We have no agreement on the amendment. So.
If I may, then if we don't have agreement, then I just wanted to.
Well,
perhaps-
I'm calling the vote on the amendment. If you have another amendment you'd like to make, then you can have the floor to move that. But on this amendment, I had already called the vote, so we're going to go. I'd asked for consensus. There was none. So we're going to go to a recorded vote on the amendment to delete the preamble. Go ahead, Madam Clerk.
Mr. Fisher,
Yes to the amendment.
Mr. Housewater,
Yes.
Ms. Kelly,
Yes.
Ms. Shanahan,
Yes.
Mr. Maloney,
Yes.
Mr. Barrett,
No.
Mr. Caputo,
No.
Mr. Cooper. No. Monsieur Villemur,
Oui.
Mr. Green,
Yes.
yeas 7, nays 3.
Okay, so the amendment carries.